Hello and welcome to this episode of Fellowship in Essential Oils. This week we're diving into Clary Sage. How are you, Liz?
I feel very smug today because I'm in home territory after having written a book about Clary Sage before. Hopefully I've got good answers today.
Yes, exactly. Now, Clary Sage is, I guess, probably renowned as being, it has a bit of a reputation as being the woman's essential oil. It's really great for women. I must admit, I still like it, and I'll talk a little bit about how I like to use it as we go through. But it's kind of known as a hormone essential oil. Would I be right in saying that?
Yes, it is known as that. What it isn't a hormone essential oil though. So quite often you'll see it written that it makes you have more estrogen. It produces estrogen. It does or stimulates estrogen. It does none of those things. What it does is it mimics estrogen in the body. So usually when something like that happens, there's a constituent within the oil that is similar in structure that the body kind of confuses it. It's not, there isn't. So it's the constituent sclareal, which gives it its Latin name, Salvia sclaria. Sclareal is like a estrogen, so it tricks the body into thinking that you have more estrogen. So yeah, hormones. But as you quite rightly say, we talk about it as a woman's oil because quite often, people will say, oh, women have estrogen, progesterone. But men also have estrogen and
Mm,
progesterone and testosterone, just at lower amounts. So sometimes, and we'll talk about it as we get further in, and it's something that I talk about a lot in my book, that estrogen deficiency can cause really strange things in people, and supplementing somebody with estrogen can have remarkable effects on their mental health. So yeah, definitely want to understand that it is a women's oil, but really helpful for men too.
yeah. So when would you recommend someone work with Clary Sage then?
So I think first and foremost, periods. And that's why people say that it is a woman's oil. It's an antispasmodic oil, so anything that cramps can be really helped fast by clary sage. And I have restless legs, which is nightmarish. A drop of clary sage in a warm bath can really help restless legs, especially if you put some magnesium, Epsom salts in the bath as well. So anything that cramps, it's really helpful for. And it is a gentle oil, even though it's very strong. It is a gentle oil, so um, you can use it on in really quite little children if you use small enough amounts. So this cramping and this griping, if somebody a little one has colic, a small amount on an abdominal massage is really lovely. Um, but also just mood generally. If you are feeling very anxious or depressed, it has a real softening, and I'm kind of skipping a long way into the video, but it's very much to do with the moon and Mercury. And the moon is all about emotions, and clary sage is like a sea of emotions. It's really
Mm.
pacifying to anybody that's got those kind of up and down emotions going on. So yeah, and skin wise, beautiful for greasy skin, oily skin, but also it doesn't have to be too greasy. So if you've got like combination skin, or even if you've got like older skin and you think, oh God, that's a bit grimy today, that's a clary sage reason to use it. What you do need to be careful of, and I don't know if you know this, but it's sort of around about the 16th, 17th century in Britain, beer was made for a while from clary sage because it was cheaper than hops. So it was an adulterant for beer. It gets you very, very, very drunk very, very quickly, which is great until you experience the headache the next morning. If you mix clary sage with alcohol, chances are you'll get dodgy dreams, but you will definitely get a horrible, horrible headache the next morning. I call it the Clary Sage axe in your head.
Yeah. So that's not if it's is that if it's beer made out of clary sage, or if you're drinking beer and you happen to use clary sage essential oil at the same time.
Yeah, and wine. Any
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
any kind of alcohol and clary sage dodgy mix. Mm.
Interesting. Interesting. Now, you will sometimes hear that if you're pregnant and someone opens a bottle of clary sage, you need to run out of the house, get in the car, drive to the airport, fly to another country, and be far, far away from it because you might have a miscarriage. Is that an exaggeration?
We don't know is the answer to that. So let's go on. It's a uterine tonic.
Yeah.
So we say don't use it in the first 37 weeks of pregnancy. Only use it when full labour is set on. However, I've got a very good friend, and I'll say her name here so people can seek her out if they want to. Her name's Susan Mousley. She is a tremendous aromatherapist. She used to be the chairman of the International Federation of Aromatherapists, but is also a midwife. So she knows what she's talking about. And she set up actually an aromatherapy program at the hospital that she was working with. So they actually prescribed these essential oils to women in labour. And what she says is lots of people use clary sage to try and speed up labour. But if you use it too early on, or you use too large amounts, what the body just goes is it slows down the labour. We often, as aromatherapists, get kind of targeted about our restrictions on pregnancy because, and I am very hot on this. I say don't use any essential oils in the first 16 weeks of pregnancy. Don't do it. And there's lots of reasons for that, but the main one is that to get real strong scientific evidence and data, we would have to do an experiment on an unborn child. Now, the ethical ramifications of that are profound. Nobody's going to do it. So nobody is going to say, oh, well, we know for sure. We can't possibly know for sure. What we do know is it is a uterine tonic. Imagine the effects on a baby and the body pushing at it. There is a theoretical risk of miscarriage with any essential oils in early pregnancy, but particularly you shouldn't use clary sage till late on for exactly that reason, because it stimulates the uterus.
Yeah, so I think it's a case of being informed and aware, but not freaked out by it. I remember listening recently to another podcast by another North American aromatherapist who said she can find no recorded study ever of clary sage leading to a miscarriage. So I
doubt that there is one. I doubt that there is one, but
yeah.
It's only very recently that we've had such a thing as scientific evidence. And there were clary sage teas, and the old ways would be to use clary sage tea to speed pregnancy, to do other things that we wouldn't want to do. And so, I mean, I am 30 years in and I still say, no, when I was pregnant, I didn't use essential oils in the first 16 weeks, and neither would I use it on anybody else. So it's not scaremongering. It is the correct way of doing it. But yeah, if you accidentally get some on you, then there's no need to freak out. No.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, another thing, the name clary sage, I believe, actually comes from a translation of the term clear eye, because clary sage was used for a remedy for pink eye.
Kind of. So clary sage, I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's a really beautiful plant with lots and lots of sort of pink, blue flowers. It goes to pinky flowers, and at the end it turns into a seed. And what they used to do is put the seed into the eye, which would collect together any mucilage, so any crap that's in your eye, and then take that out. But yes, conjunctivitis, sore eyes, itchy eyes, any of those things I use. But I use the hydrolat, so the floral water that's made from it. But yeah, we always have it in our fridge for poorly eyes. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I guess we could, as a safety message here, we could probably talk about that. Don't go putting any oils in your eyes.
No, but you can, as long as you dilute it down, you can just like wash round here.
Around. Yeah.
Yeah, but we obviously don't use neat ones. That's a silly thing to do. But yeah, the hydrolat is better for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm. Any other? Well, where I actually like clary sage, I do occasionally use it on my skin. But like you said, when you're talking about more that emotional regulation and helping with anxiety and that, it's one of my it's in my rotation. I'm a typical Gemini, so I have to mix it up every night. But it's in my rotation of oils I'll diffuse at night, especially.
Yeah, oh, definitely. It's such a peaceful oil. Um,
Mm.
and I think it's very good if you are struggling to say what you want to say and you're not quite sure on the words. And in a way, this ties into the PMT stuff, you know. It's very hard to say what you mean when you're premenstrual. You
Yeah.
savage people, you know. It calms all that down, but also just this like back anxiety. So it is really good for sleep, but also really good for people who've got like dementia, Alzheimer's, who go into those situations where they're panicked, or become aggressive. It's there's quite a lot of evidence for using it for those kind of people too. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
I was talking earlier about this idea of supplementing like for estrogen. So estrogen, if we were to say it had a name, we would say it was the molecule of worry. So, you know, if anybody who's been premenstrual will know that when that drops down, you know, you've ovulated, it drops down and your progesterone starts to rise, then you become like jittery and worrying. And one of the things that I found I did, and it was only when I was writing this book that I thought about this research, was I kind of get OCD about checking my social media. And sometimes I don't even go to bed for hours and hours. I'm just like, I'll check my email, check my Facebook Messenger, check, and I'm like, I don't actually know what I'm waiting for, but I'm worried about something coming in. And it
Mm.
turns out that this is not unusual. And it's quite, actually, it happens a lot to men. And one of the most successful ways that they have for treating men with OCD is to supplement with estrogen. So if I had somebody come to me who had that kind of like compulsiveness, I would try Clary Sage, but also, you know, people who are on the spectrum that have to kind of keep doing like stimming or repetitive stuff, also good. Yeah.
Yeah. I think all of us would have those nights sometimes where something's on our mind and we keep checking. Like I have some nights where, I'll get into bed in 5 minutes, I'm out. And other nights, like I have to pick up my phone every 5 minutes and email myself. And there's just all that kind of that machinations going on in the mind. So whenever any of us are getting into that, yeah, that I don't know if it's not irritation or agitation, but just uneasy or worry is probably
Yeah.
a good word for it. It's just you can't settle the mind. Clary Sage would be a really great one there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it to me, it is a lunatic thing as well. I mean, you often talk about lunatic. The full moon gets me like that. You know, I just don't go to bed because my brain's like, woo. And over the years, I've learned, right, I've got 3 hours where I'm going to be awake. I'm going to do that piece of work then, that kind of creative
Mm.
work, because I am at my most mental then. But uh, if you don't want to do that, then Clary Sage is very good to be able to go, shh, just stop.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. One term in my studies, I heard this druidic axiom which said, "Your conscience is the voice of God within."
Right.
And I really quite like that. And for me, I don't know why, but that resonates so beautifully with, and we're kind of moving on to that, the root of Clary Sage now. I find it's a beautiful one for helping us to listen to our own inner voice. And as we get interested in personal growth or spirituality or that, we're always like, well, what do my guides think? And what does this clairvoyant tell me? And what do my oracle cards tell me? And a lot of the time, we actually know the truth. I'm sure there are many people that have had a tarot reading before and said they were useless. They told me everything I already knew. I'm like, no, they're a good reader because they're confirming what you're already knowing. You're just not trusting yourself enough to believe it that you go and pay someone 100 quid to tell you what you already know. Clary Sage brings in that contentedness. We've talked about the worry and the OCD and the all that kind of stress, but a lot of the time we know the answer. We already know, and being able to listen to our own conscience, the voice of God within, I think Clary Sage can really, really help us to do that. And even tying in with that Clary Sage clear eye, we have when we can listen with Clary Sage to know what we want, what's our truth, the path is clear. We don't have to worry anymore. So I really love Clary Sage in that realm.
Yeah, so I always talk about it being the ruled by Mercury and the moon. Yep. And Mercury in particular is really pertinent to what you're talking about. We talk about how it's like, well, we always talk about Mercury retrograde, don't we? How everything's going to go wrong, you know? But it's to do with travel, but it's to do with communication, and specifically it's to do with the teacher-student communication, that passing of information. But I'm always fascinated by this like creation of mercurial energy. So, and in particular, I see it play out in me because I can create enormous universes in my life, in my mind, of huge amounts of information. And then I'm trying to explain it to somebody and they're just like, shall I go make the tea? No, because that gap from that state to that state is missing. And that's the hard work, you know, that getting it from there to there. And then from there to concrete of writing it down is quite easy. But this first bit here is really hard. So if you are the kind of person that's like, I've got this enormous thing that I want to do, and I need to tell the bank manager about it, I need to get somebody on board about it, or I want to, you know, explain it to people, or I'm really upset and I can't get myself understood, then it's really good of getting it from this state to this state. Clary Sage is mercurial energy. But remember that Mercury is like quicksilver. It changes. And that's also a strange thing that happens, that when it gets from there to there, you realise that's changed. Actually, that wasn't what it looked like in my head, but usually it's better because you've made it clearer for somebody else to understand. So understanding that passage of information is helpful. Yeah. But also Mercury, obviously, is Hermes in the Grecian pantheon, and as you quite rightly say, Hermes was the only one that could go upper and lower. He could go up to the gods, he could go down to the lower realms, and he was the only deity that was allowed to do that. Like, others couldn't move between. And so this idea of being able to access different levels of consciousness is very much a mercurial thing, and it's really active with the Clary Sage, especially at the full moon. And if you are trying to learn to scry, so whether that would be to be scrying in the black mirror or in your crystal ball or in water, it has that same sort of energy of just wait and for it to appear. You know, you kind of learn that kind of something is coming. I always think it's a bit like, do you remember those 3D pictures and you used to have to stare into them and then suddenly
I was crap at them. I was rubbish at them. People used to be good at them, but
that's a scrying thing, being able to like to relax your eyes, to kind of look but don't look. That's very much a scrying thing. So now you've learned now you know that you want to try them again. You don't see them very often.
I will.
Do you? But
no, you don't.
Yeah, this look but don't look is how you do it, and that's how you scry. And Clary Sage is very good at going, don't look at it, listen, perceive it, intuit it, don't look at it. And you learn to have a new antenna, really, to notice what else is going on if you use it enough.
Yeah, the mantra that just kind of dropped into my head is you don't need to seek the answer, the answer's already there.
Yeah.
It's kind of, and I think just as we've been chatting, it's really occurring to me that, you know, in my life at least, that Clary Sage is quite a powerful spiritual oil, but probably doesn't get listed as, you know, as a supreme spiritual oil that you'd need to have in your spiritual toolkit. But as we're talking,
but it is. If you were like, I mean, so again, jumping forward, it's very much brow chakra stuff. and throat chakra, but brow chakra. So if you want to learn to intuit, I don't think there's a better oil.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, and I'm reminded of someone when I was teaching, a crystal class, and this guy came to me afterwards, and he was really, really frustrated with himself. He says, I'm struggling with crystals." Like, he said, I became interested in them about 6 weeks ago, and I still can't feel the energy of them.
I can't.
And I said it took me 7 years. It's a subtle energy that takes time. It's like, a trained, like we take a car to a mechanic and they can hear that something's not right. And we're like, it sounds fine to me and that type of thing. And sometimes I think with spirituality, we get into this game of comparison of like, oh my God, everyone else is, sometimes with crystals, especially people are like, oh yeah, I can feel a little tingling. And someone's like, oh, I felt my whole arm heat up. And then the next one's like, I felt it shoot up my arm. And the next one's like, I held it and an angel spoke to me. And then the next person held it and all the angels spoke to me. I'm like, the answers are there, but we just don't try. Yeah, I think no, I'm going to bastardize it now, and I should never quote Star Wars. But what does Yoda say? Don't don't try or not try, just do, or so, I don't know, something like that.
I
Someone,
don't know. I won't be able to tell you. No, I don't know. But
no,
you're right though.
we'll get comments now. Yeah, but
Because
it's not about
yes,
trying.
please do write it underneath what on earth Yoda
Yeah.
said, and ideally backwards. I do like it when Yoda speaks backwards. But yes, it's about walking into the resonance of something, isn't it? And some of us are just better at it than others, and I do think as much about trusting. People always say to me, "What was it like being brought up by a clairvoyant?" And I go, "Well, she was my mum. I didn't know anything different. But as an adult now, I really recognise that she never said to me, 'That's stupid. Don't do that.'"
Yeah.
No, no such thing as fairies. Nobody ever said that to me. When I talked about like auras, everyone's like, yeah. We talked about ghosts. I mean, I remember, but I've really gone off track now. But I can remember one evening when Mum had a very glamorous dinner party, and my sister, who we should have her on the show one day because you should really witness how not very good at controlling a mouth she is. And she came downstairs, and she was always very good at being able to say things that nobody else would say. She came down and she went, "Is anybody listening to me?" And everyone was like, "Oh, this little girl's got out of bed. What's this about?" And she went, "I don't suppose anybody's interesting that I just saw a person walk through the toilet wall. Are they? No? Okay, I'm going to bed." But that was what our house was like. These things were accepted. And so it's not surprising that I can do what I can do and what she can do, because we never had a moment where we had to relearn it. We kept our childhood stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, one thing I guess we've been talking about, like it clears the way so we can just allow wisdom, guidance, whatever that may be, to come through. Sages are renowned for being cleansers. White sage is probably the most famous, although we do need to be wary of how we're using that because of sustainability issues. Spanish sage is another one that I love to cleanse with. Clary sage can also be used for that as well. Where would you possibly use that as would you? And when would you use it as an energy or space cleanser?
Well, I can't leave it, so I have to say white sage is an Artemisia. So, but yes, you're quite right. But do you know what? I don't know. And the reason why I don't know, in fact, if other people want to look back through other interviews, there was an interesting one I did about 6 weeks ago with a lady called Angela Sidlow. And she was the lady that she came on the masterclass, remember? And she had those cards with the acupressure points on.
Yes.
And she had this fantastic clary sage plant that she'd grown. I cannot grow it for love nor money. So normally I would use like herbs for space cleansing. Well, I've never got any clary sage because it won't grow. But I kind of, the only time I would ever do anything similar to that would be like connecting with the angelic realms. So like spritzing it into the aura to lift the resonance and the vibration, but wouldn't necessarily use it for space clearing. How would you use it? That's interesting.
yeah, probably where I would lean into it would be we've been talking about the moon and cleansing space around for that more spiritual work. I think where there's that erraticness that we've been talking about today, with that to kind of cleanse that, I think, or where there's erratic energy around, or there's I'm almost getting visions now of when like there's a tragedy and you need to focus and that type of thing, or there's erratic energy you just need to kind of zone in, or get rid of that so that you can do your healing work, or if there's something else on your mind and you need to focus to clear. That's where I'd kind of reach for it
It would be
to
good as
cleanse away
well
that
if you.
emotional energy.
I think that's really good. I think the other thing that would be really good is if you were trying to study. It just
Mm,
really kind of pacifies that so that you can just let stuff go in. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Now, you talked a little bit about it being the moon and the Mercury. I'm still a bit of a stickler for. I love my purple flowered plants being a Jupiter. So when I lump it together, and I've been Jupiter is in retrograde for the rest of the year now. So I've been throughout September and so on. I've been talking a lot about Jupiter, Jupiter, Jupiter. Um, you know when we look at lavender, hyssop, clary sage, tulsi. Um, Spanish sage, they either give us oils from their purple flowering tops or they at least have purple flowers. So they all kind of are tied in with that Jupiterian energy of they all help us with a little bit of wisdom, but also helping to cleanse out the things that stop us from growing. But the interesting thing during a Jupiter retrograde, Jupiter is, fun fact about Jupiter, largest planet in the sky, we already know that. But because of its gravitational pull, if Jupiter wasn't in our solar system, Earth and Mars and all Mercury and Venus would have been sucked into the sun. And it's actually, they predict that it's responsible for throwing Uranus and Neptune and Pluto out that way, out into the region, because he just bandies around in that way. So he is a planet of good luck, of fortune, expansion in our lives and in our spirituality as well. And so when he goes into retrograde, what tends to happen is things like we get less invites or we have less opportunities. If you rely on clientele, it drops down. You might find that social life drops, money can drop down, or you get more unexpected bills. So what happens is your life becomes a little bit quieter. And this is a really great time because the color often associated with Jupiter is the color violet in the crown chakra. It's you know, the challenge I give people when I'm talking about Jupiter is I want you to breathe in. Now keep breathing in, bit more, bit more, bit more, and eventually we're going to pop. So we need to breathe out. And the Jupiter retrograde, which happens for about 1/3 of every year, so about 4 months of every year, is your time to stop and make sure that you are actually on the right path to go forward. So working with these oils, whether it be clary sage or hyssop or tulsi or lavender, these are all, rosemary is another beautiful one sacred to Jupiter as well. They really help us to stop and make sure that we are going in the right direction that we want to expand. Because we've always been in, I'm sure we've each had something in our lives where we've been going forward and we end up, because we haven't had a chance to think about it, we ended up somewhere where we didn't want to. And Jupiter retrograde is a time to kind of just make sure that, hold on, this is my breath out before I take the next breath in to expand into the next direction that I want to expand into, rather than I just accidentally fall into. Does that make sense?
It does. It really makes me think of moon energy and also Mercury retrograde, this idea of reflection. I talked about scrying, but
Yeah.
the moon doesn't have its own light; it reflects the sun. And so when you have these kind of medicines that have this kind of looking back, thinking, reflecting, they're really good for mental health. We don't really build these into our calendar, now that we haven't got the sabbats, there's no time for sitting and reflecting, but that is the whole point of like following the moon cycles, isn't it, that we have that time. But it is a really good oil for sitting and reflecting. Yeah. And sorry, I was going to say, like with one of the other things that makes me think of like Mercury is when you have a Mercury retrograde, you often have people from the past turning up, don't you? That's a weird phenomena of it. These old boyfriends and old friends, and you're like, I haven't thought about them for years, and you, they're almost like healing opportunities. I haven't thought of them for years, but actually, that's really bringing something up for me, and it gives you a chance to be able to work through it. Again, that is another way to use Clary Sage. When those kind of moments rear their heads, and you're like, that does not fit in this time zone. That's not my life now, and you kind of have that wobble. It's really good for that.
I think you brought up a really good point that seems to be coming up a lot recently. Is those that just follow the sun, and are into astrology and even just into the moon, like we are and many other people are. They tend to reflect on their lives about once a year. It's that New Year's Eve time. Do you know what I mean? You kind of look back and you go, oh well, that year was rubbish, and this year's going to be much better. What I love about working with the moon is every dark moon into the new moon is like a New Year's Eve. So every 28 to 29 days is a time to kind of go, am I heading in the right direction? And depending on which zodiac sign that moon is in, you can kind of zone into that aspect of life. You're exactly right with the retrogrades. Each one of them offers a lesson and a time of reflection to kind of step back because their energy isn't helping you to go forward at that point in time. And with Mercury retrograde, a lesser known fact that people don't bring up as much is Mercury governs the logical, quick thinking mind. And so that's going to not be as reliable during that time, which is great because that actually gives the intuitive mind a time to come up because the monkey mind isn't going off all the time. So whenever there's retrogrades, and retrogrades are happening all the time. They can, yeah, each one, Mercury is only for 3 weeks. Venus and Mars are around 40 days. Jupiter and the larger planets go up to 5, 6, 7 months kind of thing. So there's always time in different aspects for reflection. And you're exactly right. Those people that stop, pause, reflect on their lives and go, am I heading where I want to head? Can redirect the sails a lot better than someone who checks in once a year and go, oh, that was a waste of a year. Hopefully next year's better. And then they just do the same cycle over and over again and get to the end of their year, the end of their decade, the end of their job, the end of their life, going, this is where I wanted to be. So working with the moon or astrology can really help us with that. And I think Clary Sage is a beautiful complement in many of those reflections.
Yeah, and I think that also, I wouldn't say it was necessarily an oil of gratitude. It's not. But
No,
that process of kind of checking in once a month, because you haven't gone too far off, it does make you like go, oh, look what I achieved this month. Oh, I did do that. Oh, I didn't do that, right? So I can reassess myself, and it does make you more like, gosh, things are going well with me, and it makes you more grateful about what's going on. I think, yeah.
yeah. Even working with the moon and Clary Sage in goal setting, how do you become the world's best piano player? Oh, well, I could never be that. Well, this month, can you buy a piano? Next month, can you find a piano teacher? Next month, can you learn to play one song? Bit by bit by bit, it's those small steps. So Clary Sage, if you are, I think, if you are worrying about how do I do something big, and maybe I've got to achieve something by the end of the year, maybe I've got to save this money, working with Clary Sage and breaking it down to lunar cycles could be a really nice way of stopping that monkey mind or those machinations that are really stressing you out as well.
Definitely.
Mm. So Clary Sage, not just a women's oil. It's got some really spiritual potentiality. It's great for guys. I love it. And I think all guys can benefit from using it as well. And so many other uses for it that hopefully we've kind of uncovered in this episode.
Yeah, definitely. I think the key word to remember, if you are a guy and you're not sure how to use it, remember cramps. Anything that comes up for cramps, great. So if you've worked out and you've got aches and pains the next day, all of those things, tremendous for Clary Sage.
Yeah. So we will see you again next week for another episode when we dive into another gift of Mother Nature. Until then, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and take care of Mother Earth because she grows this Clary Sage and we need it.
Bye bye.